Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Constructing Kingdoms with the Violet Howler, a literary analysis of the Kingdom Hearts story. Today I'm going to be discussing how the plot of Kingdom Hearts incorporates elements of Norse mythology and ancient Norse culture into its narrative and lore. When the tweets revealing the new characters for Dark Road went online last summer, fans quickly noticed that all the new characters were named after deities from Norse mythology. But the influence of Norse myth in Kingdom Hearts runs deeper than just character names. It even goes beyond visual references like the design of Odin the Keyblade Master being directly modeled after recognizable art of Odin the Norse god. When you research Norse mythology, you'll find that there are so many different connections between the original myths and the characters, story, and lore of Kingdom Hearts that you'd never realized were there. I'm planning a separate episode dedicated specifically to analyzing the plot of Dark Road through this lens once the finale actually comes out, assuming it hasn't already by the time I upload this episode, but for now, today's episode will focus more generally on analyzing how the characters, stories, and concepts of ancient Norse culture and myth are baked into the narrative of Kingdom Hearts.
Let's get down to business!
Like I mentioned in my Yozora video, Skald in Norse mythology is one of the Valkyries, who carry the souls of fallen warriors to Valhalla, the afterlife for those who die in combat. And in Kingdom Hearts, Skald appears to the player character at the end of the original Key browser game as they lie dying after the Keyblade War to bring them into the data world with the rest of the Dandelions. Not only that, but Skald in mythology is also one of the Norns, the three goddesses who determine everyone's destinies, much like the Fates of Greek mythology. Lee's character bio in the Kingdom Hearts 3 Character Files book refers to Subject X as having black hair, and the only other black-haired girl in Kingdom Hearts besides Skald is Xion, who the same passage in the novel refers to separately. This indicates that the amnesiac girl who traveled to the future from the Age of Fairy Tales that was first mentioned in Kingdom Hearts 3 is none other than Skald. Which is fitting because out of all the Union leaders who time-traveled in the finale of Union Cross, Skald is the only one whose destination is not shown at the end of the mobile game. And not only does her role as a Norn connect to her role as a psychopomp, but Skald in mythology was specifically responsible for seeing the future, adding an additional layer of meaning to her time-traveling to the modern era of the KH universe. Meanwhile, Urd, also known as Uror, is the Norn of the past. Not only is she introduced in a game about Xehanort's past, but the end of Chapter 1 implies that she will most likely die during the events of the game, meaning that from our perspective, the past is the only place she exists. So the fates and roles of these characters actually tie in with the details of their mythological namesakes. But that is not the only way that the series builds on Norse mythology. The actual stories themselves provide a blueprint for major plot points in both the overall narrative and individual games. In Kingdom Hearts 3, we are introduced to Scala ad Caelum, a place referred to by Xehanort as the nexus from which all worlds spring. This brings to mind Yggdrasil, the world tree at the center of the cosmos in Norse myth. All of the 9 realms of Norse mythology are connected by the roots and branches of the tree. And in one ancient poem, after Ragnarok, the fated end of the world in which the gods perish in a war against giants and monsters, new life will emerge from Yggdrasil to repopulate the earth. Sounds a lot like how Scala ad Caelum was built over the ruins of Daybreak Town after the Keyblade War, doesn't it? The upper branches of Yggdrasil reach toward the heavens, while Scala ad Caelum in Latin translates as stairway to the sky, or to be more colloquial, you could call it a stairway to heaven. There is also the fact that visual depictions of Yggdrasil regularly show the world tree divided into a light upper half and a dark lower half. Compared to the brightness of Scala above the surface, the underwater ruins of Daybreak Town are dark, and most notably stick out upside down from Scala like roots. Combined with the cast of Dark Road having prominent Norse mythology names, these visual similarities suggest that not only is the Keyblade War an event analogous to the cycle of Ragnarok, but that Scala may potentially undergo its own Ragnarok-type event during or after the ending of Dark Road. Especially because Dark Road has so far introduced a character named after Baldur, the Norse god of light whose death is the catalyst for the chain of events leading to Ragnarok. Another thing to point out is that Hollow Bastion has a similar Yggdrasil-type aesthetic in its design from the original game. In concept art and the world map for Kingdom Hearts 1, Hollow Bastion is shown to have a large crystal fortress-like structure with a heartless emblem sticking out upside down from the bottom of the main castle. In its original form of Radiant Garden, Hollow Bastion, like Scala, was a city surrounded by water with a large castle on top of a hill in the center of the city, with walls dividing the city into smaller districts. I personally think this all suggests that just as Scala was made over the ruins of Daybreak Town, Radiant Garden was built on the ruins of Scala after a Ragnarok-type event at the end of Dark Road. It would certainly explain why the arc that Maleficent uses to exit the Data Daybreak Town and return to the future would be underneath Hollow Bastion for Xehanort to send Kairi off in. Not only that, but trying to understand why Scala fell would provide a thematically relevant motive for Ansem's experiments to understand the darkness in people's hearts prior to Kingdom Hearts 1. It would also explain how Ansem the Wise learned so much about the Keyblade, despite the fact that his world had no known contact with Keyblade wielders prior to Birth by Sleep. Because the secret Ansem reports imply that he knew of the Keyblade long before Mickey arrived in Radiant Garden, and Xehanort subconsciously recalling his own memories does not account for the level of history that Ansem is implied to be aware of. But even if that theory gets shot down by the finale of Dark Road, however long after I record this episode that the update comes out, Radiant Garden's fall and eventual restoration, thematically mirroring the Ragnarok cycle of Daybreak Town, still holds up. Yet the cycle of Ragnarok is not the only Norse myth that Kingdom Hearts incorporates into the plot of the overall series. As others before me have pointed out on social media, the plot of Dream Drop Distance parallels the story of Sleeping Beauty, with Sora as Princess Aurora, Riku as Prince Philip, and young Xehanort playing the role of Maleficent. But it actually goes much deeper than them having parallels to the Disney version. One of the older-known variations of that princess cursed into a deep slumber narrative is the story of Brunhild and Sigurd from Norse mythology. Brunhild, daughter of Odin and one of the Valkyries, defies her father when he demands that she marry, saying that she would only marry a man without fear. For her defiance, Brunhild is cursed into an eternal slumber, imprisoned by a wall of flames as a coat of armor grows into her skin. The hero Sigurd crosses the wall of flames and awakens Brunhild by cutting away the armor, at which point she falls in love with him. Now, let's take this and compare it to Sora and Riku in Dream Drop Distance. Young Xehanort's moves as a boss battle utilize multiple fire-based attacks, and when the nightmare version of Ven's armor turns into spheres of darkness during the final boss battle, flickers of blue flame like the visual effects of a Dark Firaga spell can be seen in the sphere's cores. And after he falls into slumber as a result of the organization's schemes, Sora becomes encased in Ven's armor to shield him from corruption. When Riku enters Sora's heart, he first has to destroy the armor keeping Sora trapped, which the simulated Ansem the Wise explains was part of the key to awakening Sora. But before diving in the first place, Riku demonstrates a complete lack of fear or even concern in response to Mickey's warning about how dangerous it will be. To summarize, Riku acted like a warrior without fear, overcame obstacles linked with fire, and cut away the armor that kept Sora trapped in a cursed slumber. So the story of Kingdom Hearts isn't just adapting the immediately recognizable myths like the story of Ragnarok, but also ones that aren't as well known in pop culture but still thematically connected to its repeated uses of classic fairy tale tropes. And on top of the allusions to specific myths, even the lore of Kingdom Hearts is heavily influenced by the concept of self seen in ancient Norse myth and culture. In Old Norse tradition, a person's self is divided into 4 parts. First is the hammer, the outer shell or shape of a person. This brings to mind how in Kingdom Hearts lore, all living beings require a body or other physical vessel for their heart in order to be whole. Second is the hugger, which can be translated to English as thought or mind, and corresponds to a person's personality, overlapping with the more modern idea of a person's inner self that makes them a distinct individual. The hugger generally stays within a person, but if they have an exceptionally strong hugger, they can affect people far away from them just by thinking about them. Although hugger is a concept related in part to conscious processes, which aren't necessarily overseen by the concept of heart in Kingdom Hearts, the other aspects like the concepts of the inner self and hugger's ability to cause effects that aren't tethered to the physical sphere are analogous to the established lore about the role of the heart in the workings of the Kingdom Hearts universe. Because the heart in Kingdom Hearts is what makes a person an individual. It creates and stores their memories, and serves as the core of what makes a person who they are. And we've seen multiple supernatural feats accomplished in the Kingdom Hearts universe through people reaching out with their hearts to those that they've connected with. Third are the Fylgir, companions similar to familiars who are attached to a person and serve as guardians who travel ahead and protect them, often appearing in dreams. Not only does this sound like Chirithy and other Dream Eaters, but it's possible for a person's Fylgja to be an actual human, just like how Riku became Sora's Dream Eater in Dream Drop Distance. Finally is the Hamingya, a person's abilities that can be passed down to future generations or even loaned to someone in life who needs them. like how Master's Defender was passed on from Brain to Ephemer, or later from Ericus to Aqua, or No Name being handed down through the ages from Lushu to Xehanort, or how when Sora reached out to Riku as he was swallowed by darkness in Kingdom Hearts 1, the Kingdom Key that would have been Riku's transferred to Sora with a flash of a bright light that Nomura identified as a representation of Riku's heart. So in Kingdom Hearts terms, a Keyblade is essentially a manifestation of a person's Hamengya. So not only does the series take character archetypes and specific plot points from Norse mythology, but much of the basic lore is built on ancient Norse concepts of identity and selfhood. These elements were initially more subtle in the first act of the narrative, with the most obvious references being conceptual material like the early Hollow Bastion art. But between the Key Saga and Dream Drop Distance, these elements are becoming much more obvious within the overall story. The writers appear to have been incorporating elements of Norse lore towards the beginning of the series, but it's only with the second act of the narrative that these concepts are starting to play a much more prominent role. With this in mind, the new usage of Norse gods as character names in Dark Road is not surprising, because with the benefit of hindsight, this is merely the culmination of a pattern that has been subtly building up and becoming more overt as the series moves closer to its endgame. Beyond that, I hope this will inspire people to look back at previous games and look for other elements of Norse mythology in the DNA of the story that nobody's noticed before. Because I have a feeling that with everything we've been seeing so far, the odds are in our favor that we will be seeing more of these influences in future titles in much more obvious ways. Thank you all so much for watching. If you are interested in more of my literary dissection of the Kingdom Hearts narrative, feel free to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you back here again on January 29th for my next video.